Hello, everyone, and welcome to a great panel today on how to make life easier for your data scientists and AI developers. I'm very happy to have a great panel with us today to share their insights with you. I'm Jay Boisseau. I'm an HPC and AI technology strategist at Dell Technologies, and I'm going to have the panelists introduce themselves in the form of answering a question. Who are you and why are you so passionate about AI and data science? We're going to start with you, Craig.
Hey, Craig Smith. I work for a company called Converge.io. We're now part of the Intel family. And what gets me excited about AI these days is the fact that we're seeing more and more businesses take on AI and ML and trying to figure out how to really integrate it into their business processes and create a repeatable way to bring these technologies to create business opportunities for them. And I'm excited to be part of a company that's creating a platform that helps these technologies come to bear for these companies. So
great. Thanks for joining us today, Craig. Charles.
Hi, Jay, and hi, everybody. Great to be on this GTC panel. My name is Charles Sevior. I'm located in Australia and I work for Dell Technologies in what we call the Unstructured Data Solutions team. Bit of a mouthful, but it really means our customers who have very large capacity file storage and object storage requirements. And this is exactly the sort of data that is being accelerated through AI tools like image recognition, image processing, natural language processing. And so if you think about some of our really cool customers in the healthcare industry who are now taking pathology slides of blood samples, digitizing that, and then interpreting the cells on those slides, on those digital images to see whether there is some sort of disease automatically. And that's really amazing.
Thanks, Charles. And Robin.
Hi, I'm Robin Braun. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Vyasa Analytics, and we do something that's really revolutionary in how we treat data, and it's being able to provide an intelligent data fabric, a new approach to helping to break down data silos, and it's all backed by deep learning and the NVIDIA GPUs, and being able to provide, whether it's natural language questions or named entity recognition, or being able to provide the ability to help start to democratize AI and enable people to get at the content. I spent a number of years of my career worrying about storing the data, and now I worry about unlocking the data and getting at that underlying content that helps to power all of the AI and MLOps that we'll be discussing.
Well, great. Thank you for those introductions. And in fact, each of you sort of addressed my first question I had for you, but I'm going to ask it anyway to give you a chance to answer it very directly. What do you each think is one of the greatest challenges facing data scientists at the moment? And Robin, why don't we start this one with you since you started down that path in your introduction?
Absolutely. One of the biggest challenges I think that data scientists are struggling with is kind of twofold. One is, how do they find and bring together all of the data that they need, whether that's public and private, whether that's different data sets across different types of output, whether that's from different machines or structured or unstructured data. How do they find all of that and bring that together in a timely fashion, that they spend so much time on the data side that it saves less and less time for the science side of it and being able to actually extract the insights. So I think that's one of the challenges, that as we're creating so much more data, how do they continue to winnow in and find what they need, as well as how do they help to choose the right first challenges to target, to be able to then look at what are the next ones and to define it in such a way as to be successful at first and then to be able to continue to grow.
All right, Charles, I'm going to move to you for the next response on that.
Yeah, sure. Look, it's the data, right? It's massive. It's growing. And actually, what Robin said earlier about, originally just focusing on storing and protecting that data, that's great. But then, these data scientists have got to spend so much time actually figuring out where's the useful data and what's the data that they're actually going to put to train their algorithm, because a lot of the other data is just noise, right? There's a classic phrase, you know, I can't see the wood for all the trees, right? So you've got to actually have an ability to pre-process the data in most cases. And, you know, traditionally, up until recently, that's all been done by humans manually. And so a lot of the skill and capability of the data science teams has really been wasted on this huge amount of sort of manual processing. And I think that's the challenge that hopefully we're starting to address now.
Charles, I've never heard that expression phrased in the Australian way before. Can't see the wood for the trees, but happy to hear that international version of that famous expression. Craig, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges facing data scientists today?
I mean, it builds on what the previous two were saying. It's at the end of the day, data scientists needing to be able to refocus in on data science. I can't tell you how many teams we work with that are data scientists that are having to understand how to spin up Kubernetes clusters and do operational kinds of things that distract from the core job that they have. And so, you know, if I were to put a finger on it, it's really like what's being said here is just focusing back on the data science part of the job.
And that leads me directly into the meaty question now. And that's why are we hearing so much about MLOps lately? Why do we need it? And do we need an MLOps platform? Should all places that are doing data science have an MLOps platform? And Craig, I'm sure you've got a strong opinion on this.
I mean, listen, everyone should be using a MLOps platform called Converge. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, I think that when you look at what companies are trying to do, I mean, this is a developer conference. There's a huge debate about, you know, conversation around the similarities between DevOps and MLOps and where do those, you know, differences begin and end. But at the end of the day, they're all built around the same thing, which is enabling the developers, enabling the data scientists to focus in on the core part of their job to bring value to the business value. And, you know, whether it's, you know, different algorithms to bear, you know, retraining of algorithms and models. Everyone should be using this because it really will help refocus their teams. And then the other piece, to be honest, is a lot of companies actually have several different groups that are working towards doing some kind of ML engineering or data engineering, and the ability to bring companies together onto some kind of a platform, even if it's disparate teams, helps with visibility across teams, because sometimes it's unclear what other teams are working on and if people leave a company, et cetera. So it just really helps bring the focus back to what you're supposed to, and then help other teams see what's going on in the space you're working in.
All right, Charles and Robin, what is your response to that? We knew Craig was going to give that answer, as he should. Robin and Charles, how do you think all organizations should have MLOps platforms?
Look, those. I'll give you a couple of examples from customers, you know, that I'm working with, and really that's the cool part of my job is I get to experience, you know, these different industries. And I mentioned healthcare and digital pathology in the opening. Why don't we move to one of the really sexy topics that most people have an opinion on, which is the so-called self-driving car, you know, autonomous vehicles. And this has really started in what's known as ADAS, the safety systems that do emergency braking, adaptive cruise control, lane keeping, those sorts of things. And so actually to create the algorithms that will run in those vehicles requires a really interesting machine learning process. So there are test vehicles driven by test drivers that are fitted with all of the sensors, camera, LiDAR, radar, ultrasonic. They're also detecting what the test driver is doing with their steering wheel, brake, indicator controls, and all those sorts of things. And they're bringing all of that data into a solid state drive sitting in the rear of the vehicle, collecting time synchronized data. And then the whole purpose of that is to be able to see and learn from that test driver and go through those use cases again. So if you've got a vehicle coming out of a tunnel and then it's approaching a pedestrian crossing, what we might call a zebra crossing with particular marking on the road, and there's some pedestrians approaching from left or right with a so-called intention to cross, you know, should the car stop or should it keep going? A very, very complex set of conditions, and changing from a different lighting condition from within a tunnel to outside. You can imagine how complex that would be to develop an algorithm that would safely and reliably do the right thing. And so it's a very iterative process. So traditionally, like every one of these cars is generating between 20 to 40 terabytes of data per day. That very quickly builds up into the tens and hundreds of petabytes of data. And all of this is used to train and refine models. Incredibly complex, huge amount of data. And the only way that sensible progress can be made on these challenges is by using these advanced machine learning operations environments, of which Converge.io came to our forefront through this particular problem, to be able to, you know, refine, filter, do context labeling, prioritize the data, and then ultimately with a direct connection into the NGC software algorithm pipeline to feed that in. So we're really trying to help the data scientists to filter and accelerate that process.
All right, Robin, anything to add about the value of using an MLOps platform?
You know, I think it's a very basic, is, you know, kind of taking it back to healthcare for just a second, is taking a look at and say, particularly with the period that we've all just been through, is what can we do if we can do some of this research, if we can shorten the time to bring together data points into being able to develop a vaccine, or being able to understand impacts and being able to tie that back to genetics, and by being able to continue to drive that intelligence by linking data points together, by essentially helping people to connect those dots faster, that we can help power care and all of the other things that Craig and Charles were talking about faster, to help benefit people around the world.
All right. So general agreement here, MLOps platforms can help companies become more efficient, can help data science developers iterate faster, get through the process faster. Can you share an example of of a customer example that was accelerated by the use of MLOps? And Charles, I think you just did that in the ADAS space, but I thought maybe Robin and Craig, can you add to that with maybe some specific customer examples where you've seen MLOps platforms be deployed and developer productivity really go up tremendously?
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. In one of the first areas in looking at how to help accelerate time to value, is that we deployed working with a customer in being able to review clinical trial information. And because clinical trials can be hundreds of pages long, very dense, very robust documents and information to dig through, and that they had to send it, and they would essentially have to develop a set of questions, and then they would send it essentially offshore to be reviewed and get those questions answered, and then come back. And this was this was weeks long of how they were doing that type of analysis, and that by actually being able to instead deploy something like a Vyasa on the back end, leveraging deep learning, they were able to return to be able to start doing that iteratively, and be able to go from weeks to get insights to milliseconds. And that was through leveraging the power of deep learning. What that allows people to then do is to be able to then build out those algorithms on top of it much more quickly, because they have much better data to deal with. Going back to that data problem that we first started to describe. So that's a way of using AI and kind of MLOps in kind of a different way, but being able to use it as that building, that base platform to be able to build up and build out on. Craig, I'm sure you have other great examples.
Yeah, I mean, you know, at the end of the day, when you look at what gets distilled out of this whole life cycle of machine learning, it becomes an endpoint for many cases. And when you look at it in a larger ecosystem of an application, it's a piece of the puzzle. And more we're seeing applications and teams of developers that are relying on the accessibility and readiness of an algorithm, of a model that endpoint's always up, always available. And as machine learning has to go through its life cycle of retraining and monitoring and metering, it's become more and more important for these teams to be able to consistently get that endpoint out to the larger application. And so when you look at it's maybe not an acceleration of machine learning to the company, but it is a way to repeatedly get that out there in a way it's that the application teams can leverage it consistently.
So I'm going to throw a extra question that maybe we haven't even rehearsed and prepped for, but tell me some of the feedback you're getting from some customers once you get them started down a machine learning ops path. What are you hearing from the developers, and or what are you hearing from the executives who oversee the overall effort? What kind of feedback are you getting? Craig, why don't we start with you on this one?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing from a handful of customers, including some companies that their whole business is built around machine learning, is they're looking to mature their operations. And at the end of the day, they need a way to handle turnover within their own team. They need to have a way to handle creating an environment that when new people come on board, there's a way that this company operates. And choosing a machine learning platform gives you that ability to build upon something. And it's important, as they look at the platform of choice, that it's open and that it allows for different groups of individuals to be able to come in and leverage it in their own unique way, but in a consistent way with how the company's kind of set up its guardrails around how they bring models into production.
All right. Charles and Robin, anything you want to add about customers you've worked with?
Yeah, I think Craig has used some really good words. Repeatability and getting this problem, for those companies that their business is really built around AI and processing, whether it's image, audio, seismic data, whatever it may be, large mining companies, resources, those sorts of things. And, the criticality, we're really talking about industrial scale AI, right? It's not an R&D problem, right? It's not something that you're developing and you're using cloud resources and you're trying this and you're trying that. We're talking about industrial scale artificial intelligence processing massive amounts of data. And that's where you need an infrastructure pipeline, a software pipeline, and a data pipeline. So I think, that's really where the runs are on the board and starting to build for machine learning operations.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great phrase, Charles, to talk about industrial AI. Like, how do people use it at scale, at enterprise scale, and as part of their day-to-day kind of work of what they're doing, that it's no longer that cool little R&D kind of side project that somebody was working on, that people now are relying on these processes and these algorithms on a daily basis for sometimes for mission critical activity, whether that be monitoring a patient or something else. I think the thing that we find is that people are surprised at how fast they can start to affect change in leveraging this new way, and how simple sometimes it can be to take these steps, and what it can do to shorten timelines or shorten time to insight that they may have considered that they weren't able to shorten before. And I think that surprise is what gets me up every day, and I'm excited to have these discussions, is that sheer, they didn't know they could do it this way, and they didn't know they could have an algorithm to do this, or they could see that. And that's really exciting to me, that we can now deliver this type of results to all of our customers.
All right, I'm going to ask you all now a little bit more of a softball question. What can customers do to get AI into production faster? Any order.
All right, I'll take this one first because in many ways it's a straightforward run, right? Talk to people that you trust, talk to people that have been there before. And Dell Technologies, people would think of us as an IT infrastructure organization, but we have a lot of experience and we work with many customers in different industries that are going through this process. And previously I mentioned the automotive sector. So, okay, we partner together with NVIDIA. We provide, high performance CPU, GPU server solutions, high performance computing, large capacity storage, great networking, awesome, okay? And what we do then is we provide our customers and our partners a really large ecosystem of innovative solution partners. Some of them, for example, Converge.io have been on that map for a while. We have other partners who also do MLOps, right? And each of them have their pros and cons. There's a lot of open source development going on, and we bring that into the ecosystem as well. So what we're really talking about is a foundation and then a menu of options. And we have white papers, solution briefs. We have customer experience from working with those different solution partners. So we're not going to prescribe a particular, top-down solution. We're going to offer a menu and make introductions, and that's how you accelerate that process.
All right, Robin and Craig, thoughts on how to get AI into production faster?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and just building on what Charles said, talking to people and industry leaders and getting them involved early, and then even within your own organization, just starting the conversation, because bringing models to production and into the forefront of your business usually involves more than just a model. It involves security, it involves infrastructure teams or cloud operations teams, and we've seen these patterns come before in the form of DevOps, and even before that, just how do we bring a VM to consistently within the company and quickly. And sometimes that just means mapping out the process from start to finish so that it's all understood where the time is being taken. And it's simple things like that that can help go from a research project to actually something that's changing a course of a business.
And my other comment that I would add in there, both Charles and Craig have made excellent points on kind of how do you operationalize, how do you start to make it a ruggedized process for the repeatability that we've been talking about during this. But also I think it's looking at and helping, just this is one additional point as people are thinking about it, is what is that first kind of set of problems that you want to try to solve, and what do you want to try to achieve with it, and making that definable and achievable without trying to boil the entire ocean. I always say that if you start kind of boil mud puddle to mud puddle, you can actually start to get a good size amount of things going and get that success and learn from it, and learn from what are going to be workflow changes, what are going to be the HR changes, what are going to be skill set changes. It does have wrinkles out beyond just that pure algorithm that we're talking about, and getting kind of the IT side of it. And I think it's that there's really cool and exciting things that can happen. There are many algorithms out there that people can leverage. There's deep learning out there that people can leverage. There's platforms that people can leverage. They don't have to go out and invent things. But what's going to have the benefit and time to value for their business that can then help them be more successful in expanding out and leveraging it further.
All right. My next to last question for you three is, are there any gotchas that you want to highlight here in this panel? Gotchas that are common roadblocks that you see people running into that you'd like to caution people about running into? Any limitations or constraints that you want to remind people that are out there, and how do you think these are going to be overcome? So we always talk about all the promise and potential and power of AI, but where are you seeing the bottlenecks, the gotchas, the issues in the current landscape, and how do you think we're going to get through those?
I'll kick it off. I mean, from my perspective, some of the challenges or gotchas that I see are just the variety of ways that teams and individuals go about their business in in the data science field, and the challenge of bringing some, when a team wants to bring a platform to bear for other teams to work with, there's just a big hesitancy from other teams because they feel like someone's taking over there, or that it's going to impede on their way of doing machine learning operations. And so I think when you look at that as a gotcha, it's a simple gotcha, but really it's about making sure that if you bring a platform to bear at a company, just making sure it's open enough that other teams don't feel threatened in their adoption of that platform. So that would be a simple gotcha, but a gotcha nonetheless.
Robin, Charles, any thoughts on gotchas?
Yeah, Jay, I'll go with one that comes up all the time, right? And I'll speak to an organization that's really focused on digital transformation, using these tools. And they'll nearly always say, our CIO, our directive is that we are a cloud-first company. So, everything we're going to do is in the public cloud. So my next question is, which one? Which cloud are you going to do all of this in? There's sort of three big ones, and each one of those clouds is essentially a walled garden of IT infrastructure and, a bunch of software solution ecosystem partners that are providing tools and processes and things. And they're walled gardens because they will charge that customer money to move their data from one cloud to a different cloud and to leverage both of those. So, think carefully about the data. Don't sort of think up front which cloud you're going to use, which vendor are you going to pick. Think carefully about the data that you're actually holding. What sort of tools does it need for processing and management?
Right.
And the beautiful thing from Dell Technologies with our Apex multi-cloud storage solutions, I don't want to make a commercial about this, but we can have an independent environment that is connected to all clouds. And so your data can be managed and held in a way that you can leverage the best of any individual cloud capability, different partners that are in one cloud, not a different cloud, not another cloud. And of course, for those parts of the pipeline that are in 80 to 90% industrialized usage, you can embed those in dedicated infrastructure, and that's going to save you and your business a lot of money when those tools are being used very constantly. So we see that a lot in our partnership with NVIDIA. People might start with applications running and using public cloud libraries, but when it gets to that in production process, they're going to invest in some NVIDIA GPU hardware in DGX systems or in Dell servers with embedded GPU capability. And that's where the expense and the capability starts to improve and get into what we described earlier as industrial scale AI.
All right, Robin, you want to close us out on this topic of gotchas and challenges to overcome?
Absolutely. To the points that are being made, I think it really is understanding what is needed to run this at an enterprise or an industrial scale, and that to really be cognizant of that or aware of that as something may come out of a pilot or an R&D kind of development project, and then people start using it, and then suddenly it's mission critical, but it's still under somebody's desk or it's still in the cloud, and that all can be very fine, but also to be aware of the cost that Charles was just starting to touch on a little bit. One of the things coming from Vyasa, we do a great deal of deep learning on the back end, and that we can run anywhere, we're containerized, but that frequently, if you start to do a cost benefit analysis, having that on something like a DGX or PowerEdge server with the NVIDIA GPUs in your private cloud is far more economical than, kind of running the GPUs in the public cloud. And that's just what we've seen from doing the deep learning. So it's those type of kind of things to be aware of, that as people are going from what was an experiment, what was a side project, to now something that's being used at scale, what does that mean from a supportability, an enterprise readiness, and a cost perspective as they start to scale up and start to treat AI as part of their enterprise environment and infrastructure?
These are great answers. I really appreciate you sharing these with our audience. When I combine these with things that you've said earlier in this panel, we recognize there's challenges of finding the data that you need access to and getting access to that data and bringing it all together. There are challenges in the effectiveness and efficiency of the various tools for iterating in the machine learning process. But fortunately, we have MLOps platforms now to help with that part of it. There are challenges in using multi-cloud environments, as Charles mentioned, and there are solutions there, like some things that Dell is doing with Apex services. And Robin brought up the need to really understand your cost benefit analysis, which I think is really important to emphasize, because there's so much hype around the power and potential of AI, but ultimately everything is measured in a cost benefit analysis. So you need to get going down the right road at the beginning by gathering all that data, one of the points you brought up earlier, making your developers more effective, choosing the right resources and making sure you have access to the right resources on-prem or cloud to execute this, and calculating that total cost benefit analysis. So great set of challenges for us all to be aware of. We know the power and the potential, but you want to know the pitfalls so that you don't fall into the pits. Another one that I think is going to be really interesting here is, we all know that the value of raw data is increasing because of these techniques like machine learning and deep learning. I mean, it used to be that people wanted to steal your blueprints and your IP. Now they're even willing to steal your data, because just as a customer can derive great value from that data with these higher level analytics and AI techniques, a competitor or foreign adversary can potentially also get great value, unlock great value from that data if they can even just steal your raw data. So one of the challenges that I see going forward, you all mentioned at the beginning of the panel, is getting access to the data you need, finding the data you need, getting access to it, and being able to bring it together. And I've got to imagine that going forward, your chief information officer, your chief data officer, and your chief security officer are going to have arm wrestling matches about, no, we need to be more secure and lock this down and prevent access to it because we're at risk of data theft. Meanwhile, your chief data officer is going to say, no, but internally we have to open it up more so that people can bring more kinds of data together for these data science research projects we want to do, to see if we can derive new innovation with a better cost benefit. Do you have any thoughts about that? How your chief data officer and your chief security officer are going to have to wrestle things out in order to unlock the potential of your data science developers while protecting against cyber threats?
Jay, I wanted to jump in. What a fantastic summary of our session. You did that extremely well. And,
Thanks.
I think bringing up that the threat that everyone faces in these heightened, cyber threat sort of times at the moment that we're going through. And as you say, it's probably only going to get worse, right? And so the simple fact is that raw data is incredibly valuable. And our customers, there's this fairly old phrase floating around of a data lake, all this information that's sort of kept. Mm-hmm. And the information that's kept is pretty much kept in its raw format. There's a good reason for that, because AI and processing tools are developing, almost on a weekly, monthly basis, and improving that. When you come back to look at that data, and Robin talked about clinical trials, or it could be, genomic sequence data, that now you have some new tools to process that in the future. if you could only go back to that original data and run it again, you get incredible insights. And so protecting that original data, what I call irreplaceable data. So I see two types of data in enterprises, right? There's the mission critical data, the data that if you don't have it, you won't get authenticated into your system, your Active Directory is down, your key databases, employee records, everything is gone, right? That's your mission critical data. You can't even get to work. But the irreplaceable data is that information that was created in a process. It could have been through a clinical trial, could have been through a lab test, it could have been through one of these self-driving cars on a particular day driven by a particular driver. You can never create that again. It was very expensive to create that data. And so how do you protect that? And so, Dell has this approach where we treat both mission critical and irreplaceable data with a very similar cybersecurity techniques around immutability and fast detection and so forth. And so that's a really important point to raise.
Great. Craig and Robin, any final thoughts on the cybersecurity versus making your data more accessible to your internal developers? Thoughts?
But one of the things, and that's really where we focused a great deal of time, is on actually creating a data fabric instead of centralizing all of the data into a data lake. So that what we do is essentially virtually understand, index all of the data where it is so that it can maintain all of the safety, all of the security, all of that compliance that it has in place, rather than trying to then also copy it and have a secondary copy in a data lake and trying to keep that aligned and all of that. So that's very much why we're now kind of taking that newer approach of a data fabric, but then applying deep learning against that to bring those insights and understanding of the actual content that we're looking at, not just at the file level or otherwise. But I think that that's so important, is to say, how can we not be shipping data around? How do we not move data to the algorithm, but how do we instead move the understanding of the data, or we bring the algorithms to that data instead, so that we're not having to move data to different places that may be less secure or that may open it up to interception? How do we have the right integration with the security practices and policies and access across the data? And that's been very much things that we've looked at and evaluated, and how do we connect to an enterprise's LDAP or Active Directory, while also looking at that they may want to include some data that may be external, and bringing all of that together, because the world is no longer just your data or just external data, but it's now you want some external data paired with your internal data, paired with potentially a partner's data, and that all needs to happen to bring together the right insights, but that we're also working out by leaving it in place and bringing together the understanding of that data. It can help us with that security as a starting point. But I think it's something that that threat continues to rise, as we also have to break down, at least logically, the silos of how we keep it.
Yeah, I'll just add in that, I mean, you both said it better than I ever could. And I think from my perspective, it just goes to show why bringing security teams into the process early and getting them to be part of the conversation is just going to help make this all go smoother when it becomes a critical part of the business, if it's not already a critical part of the business. So well said, both of you.
Great. Well, thank you all for all of your insights today. I think this has been really informative and insightful and even inspiring. I certainly hope all of our attendees think so as well. Robin brought up the cost benefit analysis of ML in the workplace. So I want to make sure this has a great cost benefit analysis for our attendees. So I'm going to give you a closing shot. What is the most valuable, quick thing you want to share with our listeners as we get ready to wrap this up? Craig, I'm going to start with you.
Oh, you had to start with me. Well, the most valuable quick shot, geez. I don't have one. I don't
I
have
kind of
one.
thought I was going to be used Converge.io or some
Oh,
MLOps
commercial.
platform.
Well, listen,
So,
listen, definitely use Converge.io. I think reach out, check us out. We, the Meta Cloud is up and running, and we also have a great partnership with Dell where we have some pre-canned environments you can build out and get started right away. So
yeah, I think that's really useful. Charles.
Yeah, there's something really cool in the works. I'm not sure if we're announcing it just yet, but we're doing something together with Converge.io as pretty much a managed service. So I think something like that is going to be a great way to get started. So people on this call who sort of say, okay, what's next? Just keep your eye out. There's going to be something announced real soon.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's announcement worthy, but since you brought it up, if hypothetically something like that were to happen, it would be really good. I'll just say that.
whoops.
Robin.
And we're also excited. We have a great partnership with Dell as well, and are very excited for how, from a Vyasa perspective, we can help to bring that data together, break down those silos, get at that actual content to be able to power the type of pipelines and everything that we're doing with MLOps, and help people get to insight and that cost benefit faster. So excited to see where this all goes together, and hopefully, to your point, Jay, people got some cost benefit out of this session as well.
Great. Thank you all for your time today and your expertise, and look forward to talking with all of you again soon.